On behalf of Delta Trust, let me welcome you to our annual Investment Outlook Conference. My name is French Hill, and I'm the CEO of Delta Trust. And we have always had the pleasure of hosting these investor conferences really for over a decade now. And I think universally in our company, this is one of the favorite things that we do at Delta Trust on an annual basis. Well, for my comments today, I wanted to give some framework and talk about the economy, but talk about it in the context of Greater Little Rock and Axiom, which calls Little Rock home. So I wanted to look at the economy in today's remarks from an economic point of view of the labor markets and look at employment. I want to do a look back and a look forward in the labor markets with particular emphasis on Metro Little Rock. So 5 years later, after this great recession, where are we? Well, let's look at some of the sectors in our economy and take a look at where we are in employment over that period. This is the federal sector. These are all civilian employees of the federal government. These do not include the NSA or the CIA or the military. This is truly the folks out there who are in the civilian forces. It's down about 700,000 people from the peak. So the federal government has been shrinking over this period. The spike you see, of course, are not the navigators, but these are the census workers for the 2010 census that came on board in 2010 and spiked up federal employment very, very temporarily. State government excluding education, so I've backed higher ed out of this. Take out the growth in our college campuses around the country, and state employment excluding higher ed is down about 200,000 people since the peak of employment in the 08-09 timeframe. And then local government excluding public schools, so this is also local government excluding our K through 12 operations around the country, and it's down about 200,000 in that period of time. So government over this period has been shrinking. Maybe that's contrary to the conventional wisdom in some ways, but it nonetheless has been. But let's look at the more important sector, which is the sector that produces all the GDP. All these other people are consumers of GDP for the most part. And total private industry employment is now up, and it's approaching the level that it was prior to the collapse in 2008. So it's taken us 5 long, painful, treadmill, grinding years to finally almost get back to the total workforce that we had in September of 2008. There are 115,800,000 Americans at work today. But labor force participation rates have dropped, and they're at the lowest level for people between 25 and 54 years old since 1977. So this is our workforce. Our workforce has gone back to where it was, but the labor force participation rate is the lowest in 3 decades. Telecom, information services, media, which would include journalism and broadcast, that big category that was such a booming category in the 80s and the 90s, for example, that employment today is fewer workers in that industry, in those industries, than in 1989. So that's where technology has come to play. You've seen it in your cell phone. We don't call a long-distance operator anymore. We don't have that kind of employment base in the U.S. There are fewer people working in retail than there were back in 2008 as well. But the real area that has not recovered in the U.S. since the collapse in 08 is manufacturing. Here's total manufacturing employment, and it's down about 3 million jobs since the peak in 08. And it has not rebounded, and you can see that its longer tail here is not on any trajectory that you see it bouncing back to 2008 employment levels. Construction and manufacturing both are still lagging significantly since that effort. But you know what I'm seeing now is a trend that I'm encouraged by, and that's the reshoring effort that you read about in journalism. and is epitomized really with an effort led by Walmart here in Arkansas. And what's happening is in Southeast Asia, wage rates are climbing, pollution is climbing, congestion is climbing, and you're seeing in some industry wage rates go to like 0.8 of the U.S. Well, if you're at 0.8 of the U.S. and we have cheap energy due to our oil and gas boom with falling energy prices, we don't have pollution, we have fantastic infrastructure, and we can get goods and services through an expanded Panama Canal faster, I think you'll see reshoring of manufacturing in some areas start coming back to the U.S., albeit with a heavy component of technology associated with that. And I think we owe Walmart really a nod to be out there leading that. Because it takes a cheerleader. It's not government that's going to do this. It's a private business that's going to do it. I love this chart because while it's busy, you can go online and get a copy of it, but I really like it because it shows you the depth of these layoffs back to 1959. And you can see that in 1983, that was the sharpest post-war recession in our lifetimes prior to this one. So that's the one that the Reagan Recovery Act was designed to bounce America back from in '83. But look at the magnitude difference of what we've gone through with the steepness of the line. But after 5 years, as I said, it is now coming back almost to where we had employment. But that is what you hear about, is that we do not have jobs in this country, and this is the reason why. Well, you know, the population's expanded. No one stopped moving to the U.S. No one stopped having families. No one stopped graduating from college, and we're just back to where we were in employment 5 years ago. So that's why we face such challenges in the labor markets. Here is why Congress has wrestled with long-term unemployment benefits. That steep line there at the end are people who've been unemployed for more than 27 weeks, so half a year. But finally, you see it sharply falling as the number of jobs available begins expanding again, and we head back to that 115 million size labor force. So that's why you see the debate in Congress sharpen over curtailing or dropping long-term unemployment benefits, because this line is now falling dramatically. That drop, was significant. But in Arkansas, we're still, as reported by Roby Brock today online, still over 7% unemployment after 60 months. And we haven't seen that since, again, that '83 type recession. What I want to talk to now is about where we go in the labor markets. This one is a Mary Good type chart. Dr. Good's here, former director of Axiom, director of Delta Trust. This is correlating your degree with how much money you make and what the unemployment rate is. And the less common sense education you have, the less money you make, but the higher the unemployment rate. So people with less than a high school degree have a 12% unemployment rate. And that's the great challenge, I think, for our society, to get people educated, get them in a skill set that they can produce a great family income and climb the economic ladder. Let's look back at Arkansas. This was, I was flipping through folders the other night and I came across a talk I gave to UALR, some kind of an economic conference, Dr. Holland, back in the mid-90s. And I used this as my theme. It was a look at Arkansas employment in 1946, because that was the theme of the National Geographic magazine in September 1946, right after World War II. And this is a cover story bragging on how extraordinary Arkansas is doing in a post-World War II recovery and economic growth. There were 1.9 million Arkansans then. We've almost, we're a little, about 3.2 million now, around 3 million or so, 2.9. We were the 31st largest state then in a country of 150 million people. Now we have 313 million people and we're the 32nd largest state. So our relative position really hadn't changed much in all those decades since World War II. But the theme of the article was bragging on the industrial parade marching down the Mississippi Valley, and talked about Arkansas's competitive advantage in mineral production, oil and gas, pearls, rice, cotton, my personal favorite, chinchillas. All right, who has their grandmother's chinchilla coat hidden away in an attic somewhere, right? Barrels, sulfur, poultry, fish, lumber, all rapidly expanding into a growing consumer, home building, post-World War II economy. But the more things change, the more they stay the same. Here's a quote from Bill Fulbright. "We raise and train talented young men, then some state siphons them off." And some quotes from that article that I found interesting. "All kinds of men," and of course we would say all kinds of people, "from oil geologists now are in Arabia, to bankers in New York, all have come from Arkansas." Talking about the university at Fayetteville, that excellent engineering college at the university has 39 graduates now working at Westinghouse and General Electric. And at the bottom, as new factories are born, more and more chemists, engineers, and plant managers are drawn from outside Arkansas at salaries never dreamed of 10 years ago. But let's flash forward, because I think you're seeing our state take the action that it takes to look at jobs in the future, whereas maybe at that time we were just content with the industrial parade coming down the Mississippi. If we think about Arkansas in 2046 instead of 1946, I think we all recognize that technology is going to play a major role in the education of our kids and what kind of job opportunities they have. And STEM jobs, science, technology, engineering, and math, are sort of the theme for the day because we have the guru of that, our CEO of Axiom, to talk about his business. And we have Charles Morgan here, the founder of Axiom, which I think is great. And Charles, you've seen your whole life flash before you here. I know. It's a little frightening. We may have to sedate you a little later. But right now in the MSA in Little Rock, there are 61,500 people working in a STEM profession right here in our metro area. And that job share here is about 19%, which is pretty good when you look at it on a national basis. Expected STEM growth in Arkansas just between now and 2018 is another 52,000 jobs in this arena, statewide, not just in the MSA. We rank 65 out of the top 100 MSAs for STEM employment. When you look at that on a national basis, I thought it would be interesting to break it down and just look at computer and math occupations. And you look at the big MSAs that are known for technology base: Washington, D.C., Dallas, San Jose, Silicon Valley. And then I pick Houston just as a place in the Southwest and look at their total employment of people who have a computer or math occupation and what their mean wages are. And what was intriguing to me is out of that 60,000 jobs here, about 8,700, 8,900 have a computer or math occupation here in Little Rock, making 60,000, which is an outstanding income in Metro Little Rock. But we have a growing number of jobs that we're forecasting in this area, and we have a focus on the right kind of education in this area, in this community, and we have a wage advantage, which ought to be attractive to people seeking this kind of talent. I then looked at the MSA and I broke it down and I said, well, what are the bigger wages in the STEM arena in Metro Little Rock? And so health practitioner and technicians have an average wage of $65,900 with 3.7% wage increases year on year, which is good when you have inflation where it is. That includes both everybody from your favorite surgeon all the way down to someone working in a health technical field. And then architects and engineers, 4,000 at 64,000, and finally that computer and math group. So those are the three top STEM occupations in Little Rock. If you've got kids graduating, if they're college sophomores and they haven't declared a major yet, this is the direction they need to go. And these are the jobs that they can get and make a substantial wage opportunity in Metro Little Rock that exceeds their college graduating peers. The fastest growing ones I found interesting. So in the STEM occupations, in Little Rock, the fastest growing are mechanical engineers, environmental engineering, computer hardware engineering, engineer all other. So there's a theme there, parents. And finally, Senator Jane English is here, and one of her passions is making sure that every family has an opportunity to higher income and a professional standing that allows them to have a great standard of living here. And one of her passions is in the STEM field, but in the trades, and making sure that we get people who have hard work in contracting and in support of manufacturing technology or medical technology get the skills that they need. And I think Brookings says it best, 50% of the STEM jobs are available to people without without a four-year degree. 50% of STEM employment with those sorts of good salaries, moving up the family income ladder are available without a four-year degree, but they must have specialty skill training either on the job or through a two-year or part of a four-year environment. And those include some of these: health diagnosis, construction trades, mechanical trades, health technology, and other installation and repair and maintenance. I'm really sorry that Paul Rivera from Caterpillar couldn't be here today. He was traveling, but I went out to Caterpillar a couple of weeks ago, and I've just never seen a more stunning, contemporary, modern manufacturing facility. And if you don't think it can be done in the United States of America, you're wrong. Call Paul, go out and see it. There are 475 people out there. There are robots out there. It is an extraordinary facility, and it gives a whole new name to being made in America. And about 50% of what they make gets exported, which is fantastic for our GDP.